of a game where every pitch mattered, where every swing could shift the balance. But there they were, players in the Rockies' dugout, looking at each other with expressions that couldn't be contained. Confusion mixed with disbelief. A few shook their heads. One pointed toward the Dodgers' dugout. And then, almost in unison, someone said it loud enough for the cameras to catch, "Shohei, he's done it again, huh?" It wasn't mockery. It wasn't frustration. It was something closer to surrender. The kind of laughter that comes when you realize you're not just playing against a baseball player. You're playing against someone who's rewriting what the game even means. But this time, it had nothing to do with a home run. It had nothing to do with a strikeout. What happened in that dugout, what caused that ripple of confusion and unexpected joy, was something no one saw coming. Not the Rockies. Not the broadcast team. Not even some of the Dodgers themselves. And when Mookie Betts was asked about it after the game, his smile said everything before his words did. He leaned back slightly, glanced toward where Ohtani had already left the room, and then said it, "You want to know why he did it? Let me tell you something about Shohei that most people don't see." The game was already in motion when it happened. Coors Field had that familiar hum, the kind of noise that builds when both teams know the stakes. The Dodgers were up, but not comfortably. The Rockies had been scrappy all series, refusing to roll over despite being on the wrong side of the standings. They were playing with the kind of energy that comes from having nothing to lose. And Ohtani? He was doing what he always does. Existing in that impossible space where every at-bat feels like an event. He'd already doubled in the third inning, a line drive that screamed off his bat and rattled the wall in right center. The Rockies' outfielder didn't even bother chasing it with urgency. He knew. Everyone knew. When Ohtani makes contact like that, you're just a spectator. But it wasn't the double that caused the stir. It was what happened in the fifth inning. Between pitches. Between moments. In that strange, quiet pocket of time when the game slows down just enough for something human to slip through. Ohtani had just returned to the dugout after grounding out to second. A routine play. Nothing dramatic. He sat down on the bench, adjusted his batting gloves, and wiped his face with a towel. The kind of reset every player does 100 times a game. But then he reached into a small bag near his locker. The cameras didn't catch it at first. The broadcast was focused on the next batter. The announcers were talking about pitch counts and bullpen strategy. No one was paying attention to what Ohtani was doing in the corner of the frame. Until one of the Rockies players noticed. It started with Charlie Blackmon. He was standing near the top step of the visiting dugout, watching the game with the focus of a veteran who's seen everything. But then his eyes drifted. Just for a second. Toward the Dodgers' dugout across the field. And he saw it. Ohtani, standing up. Walking toward the edge of the dugout. Holding something in his hand. Something small. Wrapped. Blackmon squinted. Then he nudged the player next to him. "Is he?" The other player looked. Then another. And within seconds, half the Rockies' dugout was staring at Shohei Ohtani, who was now, impossibly, inexplicably, gesturing toward them. Not with aggression. Not with trash talk. With a small box. A box of sweets. Imported Japanese mochi, to be specific. The kind with delicate flavors like matcha, strawberry, and yuzu. The kind you don't find in a stadium convenience store. The kind that costs more than a stadium hot dog and tastes like a memory of somewhere far away. One of the Rockies' coaches started laughing first. Not because it was funny. Because it was so unexpected that laughter was the only response that made sense. Ohtani wasn't taunting them. He was offering them dessert. In the middle of a Major League Baseball game. A bat boy was called over. The box was handed across. And within moments, players in the Rockies' dugout were opening individually wrapped mochi, inspecting them like they just received a peace offering from a foreign diplomat. "What is this?" someone asked. "It's Shohei being Shohei," another responded. And then came the line that would echo through the post-game coverage, Shohei, he's done it again, huh? Because of course he had. Of course the man who hits 450-foot home runs and throws 100 miles per hour fastballs also travels with high-quality Japanese confections to share with the opposing team. Of course he does. The game continued. The Dodgers won. Ohtani went 2 for 4 with a walk. Standard excellence. But in the hallways after the game, the story that spread wasn't about his stats. It was about the mochi. When Mookie Betts walked into the press area, he was still smiling. Not the polite, media-trained smile athletes wear like armor. The real one. The kind that reaches the eyes. A reporter asked him about Ohtani's performance. Betts gave the usual answer, talked about his discipline, his power, his focus. But then someone asked the question everyone wanted answered, Mookie, what was that moment in the 5th inning? Did Ohtani really give sweets to the Rockies? Betts paused. He looked down for a second, then back up. And when he spoke, his voice carried something more than amusement. It carried respect. Yeah, he did. And if you're surprised, you haven't been paying attention. The room went quiet. Betts continued. Shohei doesn't do anything without a reason. But his reasons aren't always what you think. People see him as this machine, right? This guy who just grinds, who doesn't show emotion, who's all business. And yeah, he's disciplined. But he's also human. More human than most people realize. Betts leaned forward slightly, resting his forearms on the table. He told me once back during spring training that baseball in Japan is different. Not just the style of play. The culture. The respect. The way you treat opponents. You compete hard, but you don't forget they're people. You don't forget the game is supposed to be. I don't know, bigger than just winning and losing. He paused again. Choosing his words carefully. So when Shohei brings those sweets on the road? It's not a gimmick. It's not for cameras. Half the time, no one even notices. He just does it. Because that's who he is. He believes in respect. In connection. In remembering that the guy trying to strike you out or tag you out? He's just a person too. Doing his job. Loving the same game. Another reporter asked, does he do this often? Betts smiled wider. More than you'd think. Last month in Arizona, he brought tea. Not the cheap stuff. I'm talking premium sencha. Gave some to their bullpen coach because they'd talked about it the year before. The guy almost cried. A few people in the room laughed. But it wasn't mockery. It was the same kind of laughter that echoed in the Rockies' dugout. The laughter of people realizing they're witnessing something rare. Here's the thing, Betts said, his tone shifting slightly. Shohei doesn't separate baseball from life. For him, it's all the same. You show up. You do your best. You respect the people around you. You share what you have. And yeah, sometimes that means giving the team that's trying to beat you a box of really good mochi. He shook his head, still smiling. Most guys would never think of it. They're locked in. Focused. Enemies on the field, strangers off it. But Shohei? He's locked in too. Trust me. He wants to win as bad as anyone. But he's also, I don't know, at peace with it. He's not trying to prove anything to anyone. He's just playing the game the way he thinks it should be played. Someone asked if the Dodgers knew he was going to do it. Betts laughed. Hell no. I didn't even know he had those with him. But that's Shohei. He's quiet. He doesn't announce things. He just acts. And then you find out later, and you think, of course. Of course he did that. Back in the Rockies clubhouse, the mood was lighter than it should have been after a loss. A few players were still talking about the mochi. Charlie Blackmon was asked about it during his media session. He grinned. "Look, we got beat. That's baseball. But I'll tell you what, I've been in this league a long time, and I've never had an opposing player do something like that. It's classy. Old school in a new school way, if that makes sense." He unwrapped one of the remaining pieces as he spoke, inspecting it. "And I'm not gonna lie, this is really good. Like, really good. I don't know where he gets this stuff, but..." He trailed off, taking a bite. The reporters waited. Blackmon chewed thoughtfully, then nodded. "Yeah. Respect. That's what that was. And you know what? It doesn't make me want to beat him any less. If anything, it makes me want to beat him more. Because now I know he's not just talented. He's a good dude. And beating a good dude? That means something." That perspective, that tension between competition and respect, was exactly what Betts had hinted at. Ohtani wasn't softening opponents. He was elevating the game itself. Reminding everyone that you can compete fiercely and still see the humanity in your opponent. That winning matters, but how you win matters too. One of the Rockies' younger players, who'd been called up just weeks earlier, was overheard telling a teammate, "Man, I'm gonna remember this forever. My first series against Ohtani, and he gives us machi." That's not what I expected. What had he expected? Probably what most expect. The superstar who keeps his distance. Who stays locked in his own world. Who sees opponents as obstacles, not people. But Ohtani had quietly dismantled that expectation. Not with words. With sweets. Later that night, a photo circulated on social media. Someone in the Rockies organization had taken a picture of the machi box, half empty, sitting on a bench in the dugout. The caption was simple, "Respect." It got thousands of likes within an hour. Fans from both sides flooded the comments. Some talked about Ohtani's greatness on the field. Others talked about the small gesture that somehow felt bigger than any home run. Because home runs are expected from Ohtani. Strikeouts are expected. Excellence is expected. But this? This was different. This was a reminder that excellence doesn't have to come with arrogance. That dominance doesn't require distance. That you can be the best player in the world and still remember that the people you're competing against are just that, people. When Betts was asked, one final time, why he thought Ohtani did it, he didn't hesitate. Because he can. Because he has the confidence to be kind without worrying it makes him look weak. Because he knows that respect and competition aren't enemies. They're partners. He stood up, preparing to leave. But before he did, he added one more thing. You know what the secret is? The real secret behind why Shohei does stuff like this? The room leaned in. Betts smiled. He's not trying to be different. He's just being himself. And it turns out, himself is someone who believes baseball is better when we remember it's a game. A beautiful, hard, competitive game. But still a game. And games are supposed to bring people together. Even when you're on opposite sides. He walked out. The room stayed quiet for a moment. Because what else was there to say? Shohei Ohtani had done it again. Not with his bat. Not with his arm. With a box of machi.